Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ave Maria Press Professional Development Webinar Series. In this webinar, Kelly Breaux, co-founder of Red Bird Ministries, a Catholic grief support ministry serving individuals and couples who have experienced the loss of a child, will provide parish leaders with a deeper understanding of what families face after their child dies and practical ways to support them. My name is Erin Pierce. I am the Ministry Resources and Special Initiatives Manager at Ave Maria Press. Everyone in the audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions. Questions may be sent to our presenter using the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel that you see here on the slide. And I'll read as many of those questions as possible at the end of the presentation today. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link to the recording via email tomorrow. With that, I would like to welcome and introduce our presenter today, Kelly. Welcome, Kelly. Kelly Breaux co-founded Red Bird Ministries following the loss of 4 of her children, 2 boys and 2 girls. The organization helps parents who have lost a child to find healing. Red Bird partners with dioceses and parishes to provide the tools and resources to support families who have experienced the loss of a child from pregnancy through adulthood. Kelly, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, I know we were hoping that Ryan could join you, but he could not. But we're so grateful that you are here with us. And I'm going to go ahead and make you a presenter.
Yes, awesome. Okay, well, I'll get started. But just thank everyone for coming. I'm sorry Ryan couldn't be here. We're traveling to the Diocese of Cleveland on Thursday to launch their new bereavement ministry. So kind of his time off from work kind of had to be prioritized today.
Sure, of course, we understand.
So Erin, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, yes.
Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me. My name is Kelly Breaux. I hail from the Diocese of Lafayette, Louisiana, so all the way at the bottom of the boot in the center of what we call Cajun country, where Catholicism here is in abundance. My husband often shares the story that he did not know there was another faith denomination before he met me. And it's just a funny little story that we have, but everyone in our community is Catholic, and so it's a very vibrant and rich community, which we're so grateful for. So let's start in prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Jesus, we thank you for this time to be able to open up our hearts and our minds to those who are suffering the loss of a child. We thank you for the gift of Red Bird and the gift of your beautiful, sacred heart, which wants to restore and love us. We ask our Mother Mary, also a mother of loss, to help us to stand at the foot of her son's cross and to look at her son in love. And we just thank you, dear Mother, for being with us and to help us carry our own cross. And we ask Jesus to lift us. In your most holy name, amen. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And then we thank Ave Maria Press for, she just showed you guys a little bit about our book that we just launched on September 1st, The Grief of Dads. I'll share a little bit more later, but we're so excited for this new resource for our fathers who are often lost or forgotten in their grief journey. So a little bit more about Red Bird Ministries. We started in 2018, and the ministry was started because our church, in the middle of this deep familial area enriched with the faith of Catholicism, was able to provide us the Christian rite of burial for both of our children that died after birth. But they they didn't have any support opportunities available, and so we were forced to make sense of suffering in the secular world. And I know a lot of you are with me on this, where we're not seeing this Christian worldview in the secular world in other aspects of healing. So when I went to therapy, it was all without God. So we never talked about faith. We never talked about my relationship with God, only about my feelings and what I was experiencing. And while that did get me to a place that was what would I call just good enough, where I felt like I was surviving, that's kind of just where I was left. I could function in the world, and I was doing day-to-day things, but definitely at night when I'd lay my head on the pillow, I'd cry myself to sleep, almost with this sense of I was kind of waiting to die, which is a very hopeless state to be in. And realizing once I had this conversion through, I made my Cursillo, which is a weekend encounter with Christ, for those of you who don't know. And that's whenever God healed me emotionally and spiritually. And I realized there was a missing touch point of healing that most families don't even realize, because they're such in a state of grief and shock. And if there is more opportunities of healing ministries in the church to encounter these families who are lost and broken, who once knew God, that we could personally invite them into that space of healing. But of course, it has to come from someone who's experienced it, because that's when we receive those hard things that we have to walk through. It's by seeing someone else who's going through the same thing and witnessing a way out. So that was our personal grief journey. We lost our twins in 2005 and 2009. They were born at 28 weeks. My placenta abrupted, so they had to take them emergently. My son lived 15 days, and he died on October 31st of 2005. And my daughter, who actually, she survived the hospital stay in the NICU for almost 100 days. She came home on oxygen and 10 different medicines, where she round the clock care. She was on oxygen for the first 10 months of her life, all day, and the next 2 months for just at night to help her with support. So the first year of her life, I was her nurse. In 2009, after our daughter, who now is 14, was born, Emma contracted H1N1, and she died 7 weeks later. And that's kind of when my world completely went dark, and I no longer really could see God's goodness, because it didn't feel good. I didn't believe that he loved me, and I believed that it was a punishment. And a lot of our families really struggle with these thoughts. But I see so much beauty in families who are in this space, because I know the questions that they ask. Sometimes no one thinks of these questions until they're at the end of their life. So we have these hearts that are very ripe for these big theological questions about what is the purpose of our life? Is heaven real? Is God real? Is he good? Does he love me? All these big questions that we long as the church for people to ask. They're here, they're waiting for help, and we can help them. So what we've done is we've developed what we call holistic ministry. So we're gathering peers, which is like what Ryan and I are. We're gathering experts, your spiritual directors and your counselors, and also our clergy, to help to walk with these families and to receive a more holistic, well-rounded healing, which really helps our families to thrive again. So it's kind of that in a nutshell, but I want to talk to you today also too with the statistics, because child loss is a very silent loss. People don't talk about it. We don't even realize how many babies die in miscarriage, because no one sometimes knows that we are pregnant. It's not something that we speak about openly, and it's often a very taboo subject. But statistics say that over 25% of the population will experience the loss of a child from pregnancy through adulthood. And most never get the support or help that they need and deserve. So reality is that 1 in 4 people sitting in our church pews has experienced the loss of a child. So approximately 5% of the population of loss will receive support from an expert to cope with the grief they are experiencing. So we often think that our families sometimes are going to therapy, so they're seeking out professional support. But statistics say no, that only 5% who are grieving will actually receive help from a therapist. Among those 5% of people who seek counseling, statistics say that 67% are interested in discussing their faith, but less than 5% of counselors are capable of doing so. So we believe that the church does have a responsibility to help families make sense out of suffering. What we call disenfranchised grief. So in medical terminology, disenfranchised grief is when your grief doesn't fit in with the larger society's attitude about dealing with death and loss. The lack of support you get during your grieving process can prolong emotional pain. So this is usually, if they put it on terms, about 6 months after a loss happens if someone's still grieving. And we know in child loss that is actually everyone who's experiencing loss typically their grief symptoms will last more than 6 months, most often years. Disenfranchised grief, okay, it only accounts for only 4% of people who are grieving. But when we're talking about perinatal loss, so this is loss in pregnancy or right after pregnancy, it jumps to 60%. One, I believe it's because our culture does not value life and honor its dignity. So many families do not consider their loss as a loss, or they feel shame in the feelings that they're experiencing. What it does is further complicates their healing process. So perinatal loss refers to miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, a stillborn, or experiencing the death of a neonatal baby. Most often, young couples are open to life. It's something that we teach in marriage prep, NFP. I know we teach that in our marriage prep that we do at our parish. Most of our young couples never expect their precious child could possibly die. So the fear of being pregnant again after a loss sometimes leads young couples to consider contraception and sometimes even sterilization. 70% of marriages that experience the loss of a child will end in divorce 5 to 10 years post-loss. So sometimes what we see is our couples coming together right after a loss. So that's visibly what we see. And we oftentimes use words like, they're so strong, their faith is so strong. But when everyone else goes back to work and back to their life, that's typically when these couples' marriages start breaking apart because they don't have the support that they need. And because men and women grieve exceptionally different, it further sometimes pushes them away. So our solution, again, was to create Catholic programs to help guide individuals and couples through the complexity and trauma that happens with the loss of a child. So we do this through a systematic approach and tailored grief support programs. Our motto is that we serve ordinary families who have been given an extraordinary cross to carry called child loss. We partner with dioceses and parishes to provide Catholic programs, training, pathways to implementation, and ongoing formation. So what this allows is the church to mentor and serve families of child loss. So I know you can all, see the beautiful resources that Red Bird uses in our own diocese. Whenever we got the call to serve, there wasn't anything for Ryan and I to implement. So we had to go off and to create all these resources, create PowerPoint presentations, the flyers. We had to choose fonts and colors. And what this did was it frustrated me because the very thing that we were called to do was serve the hearts of the families that we loved and who we wanted something different. We were spending all of our time creating all of these administrative resources to then go and serve. So our goal and our hopes for Red Bird is that we are the creator of all these things so that these volunteers who are saying yes to serve in their parishes and in their community, they just have to show up, and it's all done for them, which is beautiful. And again, we offer that holistic approach. So when we think of holistic, what do we actually mean? So it's looking at the whole person. So we focus on the psychological, the emotional, the relational, and the spiritual needs of that person. Red Bird is very unique, as any organization that helps families with child loss, is that we do address the human aspects of grief, but because of our faith and the volunteers that we gather and invite into walking with these families, are in the position to raise the saint. So we don't just leave families where they are. We continue to work with them and walk with them, bringing them back to sanctifying grace through different pathways, if that's through introducing them to their RCIA director. We had someone in Canada that came into the church. We've had families whose marriages have been convalidated because our approach is centered around the sacraments. And we talk about that all the time. And so the one thing that we see is that, families are suffering so differently. And so it's, how do you create a ministry that responds to everyone's needs? Well, it's creating comprehensive and multifaceted programs. So you'll have programs that are just for couples, programs that are just for moms, programs that are just for individuals, so that it can speak to their needs. And we oftentimes make recommendations based on what the family is telling us. So it's very specific to child loss, which encompasses a model of evangelization, catechesis, and accompaniment that does not exist in the church today. So before Red Bird, there wasn't an exclusive ministry that served for child loss that had a comprehensive approach to it. We're a very new ministry, and so in 2018, that's when we were founded, up until today, and we've grown. And I think I joke sometimes, it's like, oh, we don't have much competition, but I really think it just speaks to the heart of that this ministry is so needed. Which is beautiful, because when you see someone who is grieving and they want and desire to grieve with their Catholic faith, it's beautiful, because this is when we see people really coming alive. It's like God restores that light within them. It's
sorry to
beautiful to see that.
interrupt you. Your microphone is going in and out.
We don't have any direct competitors in some of the research that we have.
Kelly?
Whenever we've explored it, we didn't have all of the resources. That's why you might say known or may not know. But Red Bird is so we're not just coming in a diocese, we're coming in and we're building it. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, your microphone is coming in and out. And your screen is black now, too.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, how's this?
Okay, better.
Can you see?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
After I wanted to express my grief in unhealthy ways, believing lies that no one understood. I just longed for support, and there just wasn't anything. The grace from Red Bird has been a safe space for my grief. I didn't know there was a grief support ministry for Catholics, and through Red Bird, you see that there are people who care, people who want to be with you in your hurt. desiring to meet you where you are. And that has been the grace of Red Bird.
After Kelly and I endured the losses of our children, we were astonished to find a shortage of resources to support bereaved parents. So we founded Red Bird Ministries to help parents like us in their grief journey.
Over 25% of the population will experience the loss of a child from pregnancy through adulthood, and most never get the support or help they need and deserve. This is where Red Bird Ministries steps in. We help individuals and couples understand grief, how to navigate through it, and most crucially, how to begin the healing process. Let's hear from Red Bird families that we've served.
The approach that Red Bird Ministry uses is considered a holistic approach, which brings you through the psychological, emotional, relational, and spiritual aspects of your life. It allows you to understand, you as a whole person, wanting to rewrite your thinking in the proper order so that you can understand that your grief is valid and that your grief is understood by other people, and it's okay to grieve. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to have bad days, but know that you have people there to help you through the process, to get you through those days that you just don't know if you can take another step. You don't want to get out of bed. You prefer to stay in bed and just cry or whatever you'd like to do, but there's always another step to take, and that's such a wonderful thing about Red Bird Ministries is they allow you to take that time. They also give you the tools to get you through those tough days, and so that your next tough day may not be as tough.
Going through Red Bird, it allowed me to realize that there's other people out there that share in the same grief. So having that avenue to go down, especially with the support groups, getting to know the people in and around Red Bird Ministry, and just kind of filling our time as much as we could with Red Bird is really what opened us up, I think, in our healing. I think it put us on a path to not only heal through our grief, but to also enrich our spiritual life.
I was so very fortunate to be able to attend the Restored Grieving Mothers Retreat that they held last September. And wow, I'm not quite sure what I was expecting when I went there, but I received so much grace and so much enlightenment from the Holy Spirit about finding joy in your suffering. When I initially approached the retreat, I kind of felt like an outsider, like my loss wasn't great enough. It wasn't worthy enough to be brought to the table. And so in this setting, I found it was a very humbling experience to be able to be trusted with the vulnerability of others, for these other women to come together, share their hearts, share their loss with me, and for me to do so in turn. And it really helped for us to take our sufferings and unite it to the sufferings of Jesus and to the sufferings of Mary. In this the shared experience of suffering, it allowed us all to come together. And while I started this retreat feeling like an outsider, I left feeling like I had truly belonged. I truly found women who I could hold in my heart, especially in our little groups where you get very intimate with your grief and your concerns and your desires through the suffering. It was a great way to have that personal connection with someone.
Right, so here's a couple of steps I'm going to walk with you through. So if you don't have support in your community, this is some ways that you can start to like take inventory. What do you guys offer? So sometimes it's not in a place maybe now to bring Red Bird, but there are some things that you can do before or to start creating support opportunities for families. So one of the first things that we do when we're working with a new diocese or a parish is doing a little inventory of what are the understandings of bereavement support. Sometimes we'll hear from clergy or parishes of the things that they offer in their bereavement support. And what I'm hearing them say is surrounding the week of the funeral. So we've identified there's two types of really support opportunities for families. There's one, what we call funeral support. So that's the week of the funeral. And then what we call bereavement support is thereafter. Typically about 1 month after the family loses a child is when most of their support system kind of starts to fade away. By month 6, that's usually when people are in desolation. Going into their first year, it's a very hard year. The second year is harder because typically the shock is worn off and reality is set in. So expect when you're ministering to someone who has lost a child that those first few days, people are not operating to the capacity of what the grief is going to do to them, one, emotionally, psychologically, but also spiritually. And the other thing I often like to remind people is just because someone has a strong faith life doesn't mean it's not going to be the first crack of their foundation. So please pray for those families, because I never questioned if heaven existed, if God was good, until my son died. And at 25 years old, I had these very morbid thoughts that were coming into my head. And not having someone to speak truth really set me back. So having this support opportunity for families, not everyone's going to take advantage of what you offer. But for those that God sends your way, you really have an opportunity to really be very impactful in these families' lives. So the next question, just is there sufficient training for pastoral leaders to assist grieving parents and family members? Do you have a comprehensive list of Catholic counselors, spiritual support groups, books, guides, and resources? Have you had a conversation with your grief experts about their view on being open to life? One of the biggest issues that we have with counselors is two big things. One, it's the view on life, because a lot of them will sometimes validate contraception and sterilization. And the second thing also to the sacrament of their marriage. So if who you're referring your families to does not have the same view, Catholic view, sometimes it could hurt families even more. Also, is there a clear roadmap for accompanying couples who have lost a family? So when someone loses a child or even any other family member, is there a next step after that funeral is over where you would send this family to support, or is there a bereavement opportunity for them? Most often, parishes don't have this. Do you have an advocate in your diocese or parish for accompaniment? We often find that a lot of our parishes do not have money in their budget for bereavement support. So this is something that you should consider and have a conversation around it. Oftentimes, we talk about in the church, we love to celebrate, but some of these harder topics where these families need these healing opportunities, there's not oftentimes the space to be able to offer it to them. So really having a conversation just around that, is that something that your parish longs to do, and having a conversation about it is always helpful. Also, step 2, connecting families with compassionate support. So not all the time when people come into our diocese, are we sending them to our local Catholic counseling office that we have, because we do have a Catholic hospice. So that's one of the things that if you have a Catholic hospice in your area that offers bereavement support, the federal government has, I think it's in 2018, they passed a law that all hospices have to offer 1 year of bereavement support. So if you have a Catholic hospice, you can send those families there as well. So that's a great offering if your families don't have the finances to be able to pay for support. Also, too, the next thing I want to bring up is the memorial mass. For a lot of our families who've had the loss of a child in pregnancy, many of them will never hear their child's name be spoken again. And so hosting a memorial mass where they can honor and speak that child's name, it means so much to a lot of our families. So having a memorial mass exclusively for those families who experience a loss from pregnancy, loss through adulthood, is really special to them. October is a great month to have it because it's Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. October 15th is that day, but a lot of our parishes will have it around All Saints and All Souls Day as well. It also invites families the opportunity to step back into the church building. So for me, for my part of my story, after Talon and Emma passed away, I was having flashbacks of the coffin. And so after Emma passed away, I could no longer go to our church parish. This is the parish that my husband has made every sacrament. It is his home, our home. But the very place that was once safe to us no longer was safe. So having these opportunities, inviting just families back into the building sometimes is a first step for them. It also elevates lives and sends the message that the church sees you. It also creates a safe place for our community to meet other families of child loss. And it's a great kickoff for bereavement support in a parish or a diocese. Red Bird has created an online community inside our branded app. So we try to group our families, so our moms have lost and our dads have lost, into these groups so that they can share authentically and meet other families just like them. It is on Apple and Android, so you can download the app and also refer families too, so that's a great opportunity. If you don't have support, at least somewhere for your families to go. There's also access to talks, books, book studies, prayer plans, courses, online events. We did one on Friday for Our Lady of Sorrows. Every month we do webinars, so we have workshops at least once a quarter for couples and individuals. And there's also opportunities, like we were sharing, for other families that experience loss to connect with other families. I oftentimes love to give the little example. We have a mom that's in our diocese. She's a personal friend of mine, and I know this because she shared it with me, that she connected with another mom on our app who their baby died on the same exact day, but the other mom was in Louisville, Kentucky. So they've been supporting one another and on this journey because of that shared date. So it's so beautiful to see these families ministering to one another. They find commonality in their stories. Sometimes it's in the age of their child's loss or the way their child died, and they provide one another with support opportunities. It's a beautiful experience. And then we also have resources that families can purchase through our website that they can do in the privacy of their home. One of these resources is our Restoring Love. It's a 33-day guide and consecration to the Holy Family. So really journeying with the Holy Family. We call them modern day saints and modern day sinners. So St. Louis and St. Zélie, the modern day saints with Ryan and I, and we journey through these big topics that come up in a couple's life. So it's surrounded by a thought or a question, and couples have the opportunity to have conversations over the course of 33 days. And then they either renew or consecrate themselves to the Holy Family. And then also too, if you're at a stage or a place where you're ready to invite Red Bird to come, when we talk about chapters and flocks, our chapters are on the diocesan level, our flocks are on a parish level. We provide training and accompaniment to leaders so that they can be equipped and encouraged and be able to go and serve the families in their community. So currently we have 12 national chapters and 1 international diocesan chapter, and an additional 10 national and 2 international parish flocks. So we cover about 15 states. Different parishes, different dioceses will begin or start with different support. Sometimes, you know, what we're doing in Lafayette is not the same that we're doing with the Diocese of Arlington. So they have the freedom to really take our programs and implement them in a way that really works for the community that they're serving. And you can kind of see on our map of the places that have shown interest, national and also international. Some of these we've actually already implemented. So a little bit about our approval from the Catholic Church. So we have received approval from the USCCB and are listed in the official Catholic registry. We also have been given a blessing by our local bishop and different people within our community. We also fit nicely in the Call to the Joy of Love, which is a national pastoral framework for marriage and family life. It was signed by the bishops during their plenary assembly in June of 2021. So it's a response to Amoris Laetitia, and we fall into this pillar 3.3.3, which is to educate, encourage, and engage and accompanying couples who have lost a family member, especially a child. So at least one of our programs fall in each one of these 3 columns. Child loss, like we were sharing before, is a very unique type of grief that needs special ministering to by both clergy and the laity, and mentors who have experienced loss themselves. So dioceses and parishes, we know, want to start offering support for families, but sometimes they're perplexed on where to begin. So that's where we strategize with our leaders to be able to offer and really launch that support beyond the funeral. And it is our belief that as the church, we should not leave families of loss to make sense of death in the secular world without God, nor should we allow these families to carry this cross alone. Most clergy and leaders want to offer compassion and empathy to families, but feel ill-equipped to do so. So that's where we step in, and we provide engagement in 4 different approaches through our programs, our online community, our support groups, and through our mentors. So what we see, Red Bird, is like going into the deep. So you'll see a lot of things that we offer as far as through social media. We'll use a lot of technology because a lot of our families are not in our church pews. So like I said before, when Emma Grace died, I stopped going to church. A lot of these families are living in shock. They're suffering from PTSD. They're really struggling with isolation and desolation. So most of them are hiding out in their homes. So our goal is to promote awareness that generates interest while establishing a need and a call to action that concludes with advocacy. So we provide all these different ways of going out and reaching families to bring them into Red Bird, where they find trusted relationships, and then we accompany them back to church. Since rebranding our website in 2020, Red Bird has welcomed more than 107,000 visits, 77 which were unique visitors, and received over 221,000 page views. So our 3 pathways are the institution, the family, and our digital components. We offer different programs. Like I was stating before, we have a 10-week grief group study called Finding the Passion of Christ in Our Story. It also holds the Imprimatur. Our one-day couples workshop, this is something we can either offer, Ryan and I will like travel to go and offer it, or we can train your leaders to be able to facilitate it. Sometimes parishes or dioceses will invite us for that first time, and then we train the leaders while we're there. And then also our app. And then those resources that we were mentioning that they can do in the privacy of their home. And we're so grateful for Ave Maria Press for releasing and publishing our Grief of Dads book on September 1st. And we had the privilege of Bishop Kimmy in Wichita of endorsing the book. He's been so generous with us. And one of the things he said, which touched me, was, I wish I had such a resource in all the years of my own pastoral ministry to help men navigate such grief. I also received a beautiful testimony yesterday from Deacon Adam Conk. He is a deacon at a local parish in our diocese and a very good friend of ours. But reading the book for the first time, he writes, tears escaped my eyes multiple times while reading. I found in these pages my own experience of loss, my deepest fears becoming the reality of other dads, and the many parishioners and friends whose experience of loss were represented in these crippling testimonies. The book is absolutely beautiful. So we recommend that you can refer your families to that book as well. And then we have some impact programs that are in development or been newly released. Our podcast in July was launched. We're on episode 6. And so the idea is that we uncover and talk about very hard topics that most often people don't want to talk about with others. And so we bring that thought or that question, and then we have conversation behind it. And then our Good Shepherd program, which is in development with Divine Mercy University, our pastoral workshop is being piloted on September 30th. And then we'll launch that to the church as a educational piece for clergy and professional experts, specifically to priests, deacons, and their wives, spiritual directors, counselor, or any church staff who will encounter and possibly minister to a family of loss. While our church understands suffering and grief, our clergy, they really don't get the education and information within seminary, and most of them learn on the job, sometimes being thrust into what I'd call like situations where they don't know what to do. And many of them have found their way into either our office on the phone with us or some of our leaders in tears because they don't know what to do or how to help these families.
There's no doubt that the hardest funerals to do are those of children. And when I say children, the age doesn't really matter. I've had a funeral for a young child, but also a funeral for a 72-year-old whose mother was still alive. The look in the mother's faces was the same at both funerals.
Emptiness, loneliness that the human heart experiences, and from that I think has grown this desire for grief ministries, particularly Red Bird Ministries. You know, that Red Bird Ministries is just simply a program that's coming from the top down because it seems like it's a necessary thing, but rather it's a fruit of something beautiful that has happened. A fruit of suffering and of people who want to be Simon of Cyrene for those who need their cross to be carried.
It would be very consoling to know that there was a ministry like this in the diocese, because I could know where to turn. I could know where to send people to, and I could know that there's real help, not just a brochure, not just a pamphlet, not just a video series, but real people that are willing to meet my parishioners in their loss and in their most difficult time, to encounter them and to show the love of Christ to them.
So Father Rusty Bruce, he's our chaplain for our mom's retreat. He shared with us that he felt that there was nothing that had prepared him for what was waiting in his parish until some parishioners introduced him to Red Bird. He so gratefully accepted that and invited us in, and we were able to begin building a bereavement ministry within his parish. Father Stephen Castile, after learning about this ministry recently, I felt drawn to be a part of it so that I could draw on my experience of being married and having gone through the loss of 2 children before birth, which is beautiful. He can share in his own personal witness. And then Father Eduardo in Belize, so much fruit was born through the 6-week support small group. One mother came back to the church after 2 years and returned to confession. One father shared interest to help at the next study. One father even confessed that he had a plan to take his life, and Red Bird changed everything for him. So I shared a little bit about the Good Shepherd. I'm going to kind of go on so I can get you guys into that question and answer. Just so a little bit of a testimony from those leaders who were able to serve in their own communities with our programs. So Ayo is in Nigeria. She led one little small group and she impacted 20 families. Jewel Behai, she is in New Orleans. So this was the first group outside our chapter outside of Lafayette. She says that Red Bird has helped to build a bond between people who are suffering loss. In 4 years, she's impacted 900 families, 80 children under 17. In Wichita, Kansas, Sharon, she helped to facilitate 2 couples workshop and led one grief group in Wichita, impacted 60 families. And she shares that after the first workshop, she could visibly see a physical change in families in just one encounter. And Pam's impacted 50 families. She said Red Bird Ministries grief accompaniment is a missing touch point of evangelization in the church. It's a great opportunity for families. And then personal testimony, Amber, who came to one of our retreats, says Red Bird saved her life and her marriage. And Maddie in Australia, listening to the reflections on the Hallow app in the middle of the night, helped her to give her strength and to know that she was not alone. And Janet in St. Augustine says, for the first time, I'm starting to believe I can feel joy again. So many beautiful testimonies of families finding their way back on that journey. If someone is available or who wants to learn more about Red Bird Ministries, we do have a follow-up call that you can book on our website, where I can go into more of the costs associated to this, and how we onboard and walk with families. I can also make it available, the PDF slides, to Erin that she can send out if you're interested in that information. So Erin, if you want to come back on, yeah, we could start questions.
Absolutely. Kelly, thank you so much. This was very informative and also, in my perspective, very hopeful too. I just love all of the testimonies and all that you have created out of your own, isolation and grief and your need for support. Can you tell us a little bit about the title, Red Bird Ministries?
Oh yeah, we get that question all the time. So I have a friend, which she was so impactful on my journey. Her name is Misty, and her daughter was 10 when she died. And I always joke that I thought I could help her, but she really modeled the Blessed Mother for me. She never swayed from her faith, and I was waiting for her to be mad, and she never did that. She showed grace and stood at the foot of the cross. And some friends of ours in our community wrote a song called Red Bird Flies, and it talks about Isley in the song, and it says, every time I see the red bird fly, I think of you. And my whole life I've known that cardinals, or a lot of times, were associated with grief. And so I asked my friend if it would be okay if we would call it Red Bird Ministries, in honor of all the families that were listed on that song, but of course all of our families who we serve.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I invite everyone now, anybody who has a question, please type it in so that I can ask Kelly. I know this is lots of questions that people have, especially those who are ministering to parents of child loss. Have a question here already. Someone said, I am a spiritual director and also faculty with Divine Mercy University. She is interested in the institutional pathways for herself as a director and wondering how she could find out more about this.
Yes, awesome. Well, if you would like to join us for our pilot workshop on September 30th, I can definitely make that available, that registration available to you. And also too, I was talking to Erin right before this, we were working with the Diocese of Arlington, and she's also a spiritual director, and she wanted us to create a webinar exclusively for spiritual directors to just help them to unpack some of these questions that a lot of our families have to ask. So it's not something we have done yet, but it would be very easy to do. So yeah, if you want to email me at kelly@redbird.love, I would love to be able to have more conversation around this.
Great. She says, I do. So kelly@redbird.love.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Excited. We are loving working with Divine Mercy University. They're great.
And you mentioned Hallow app too. What do you have on Hallow?
So we have 6 sessions. They're prayer, like meditations on Hallow. It's under the mental health section. And so you can go to the mental health section, and there's 6 of them there. They're about, I guess, 10 minutes long. Yeah.
Okay, great, wonderful. I think you gave all of us a lot of information to kind of digest and really a place to start. I loved how you talked about, asking those questions in your own parish, among your parish leaders. What ways are we supporting parents of child loss beyond the funeral week, right? Or beyond the funeral. So I think that's so important. And then what can be done? What resources might they have? What resources might they need? And then I will also include in the follow-up email the link to Red Bird Ministries. So if you're interested in more information, you can find that there and reach out for more if you need. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book, The Grief of Dads.
So exciting.
Yes. Oh, I got some more questions here or comments. Thank you for creating this ministry. There really has been nothing out there that I have been able to refer people to as part of the diocesan Respect Life ministry.
Yeah, I do believe that addressing this, especially when it comes to pregnancy loss, if we validate life loss that was wanted, it really will help us to build a culture of life. I firmly believe that. Because people know, they don't even know that they can name their babies. So it's so beautiful when we give them permission to do that. So encourage them.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've come a long way in regards to helping parents, but there's also a long way for us to go too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was the comment here. Absolutely. So Grief of Dads, do you just have to be a dad to benefit from this book?
No, I have a chapter in there too for wives, but it's also too, men don't talk about their feelings. So if you want to know what our dads of loss experience is, anyone who loves someone that has lost a child, the book is great. I've had people who have never experienced a loss that has read it, and it's just a beautiful love story between these men and our Lord healing them. When we think about grief, a lot of people are so timid and shy, but when you get to know these families, there's the most compassionate, kind, loving, and people who are serving in our parishes because they've suffered. So the book is just another one of those books that if you're a clergy and want to know how to serve, it's a great resource. If you are just someone who wants to be inspired, it's a great resource. If you love someone who's lost a child, like I said, it's a great resource. And if you don't know any of those and you want to buy it for your pastor, do that too.
It would be a great resource for a parish library, most definitely. Yeah, yeah. And I know there's a good amount of information about how men grieve differently, and we don't necessarily know that, and so we can't help them if we don't understand that. Yes.
Yes. And also too, what one thing that I love about the book, which I also too I'm gonna promote, That Man Is You, that my husband loves, is that it has a lot of statistics, and men love all this knowledge, and there's so much good knowledge in there. So it's they love it, and that's how kind of the book kind of opens too.
Yeah, lots of facts.
Yeah, lots of facts.
Another question here from one of our attendees. First and foremost, thank you. A quick question. Do you have a resource page on your website that will help parishioners to connect to the various resources you have mentioned today?
Yes, we do. If you go to the website at the top of the page, it says Get Support Now. That'll direct you to our support page. There's also not only just the physical, like printed things that we have in our podcasts and our app, but there's also opportunities for them to schedule a comfort call with our Director of Family Support, Elizabeth Leon. And also they can even schedule spiritual direction from Miss Kathy, who is also certified by Divine Mercy University. Wow. But just beautiful. She's just a beautiful soul. And she's been working with our families for about 4 years now.
Great.
So it's a great place.
Great. And parishes who might be interested in finding more information or even bringing you on, there's a place on your website where they can get more information, maybe a call or something you mentioned?
Yeah, at the top of the page it says for leaders and like for families. So you would go to the leaders section, and then it says get information, and you would choose if you're a parish or a diocese. And that comes directly to us.
Great, great. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for sharing this time with us today, sharing your love and passion and giving us opportunities to support one another. And I also love the fact that you talked about how this is an opportunity to evangelize, and how important that is in our church and in our world today. And thank you to all of you who were with us today and all of the good work that you are doing in your local parish, in your diocese. And we hope that Ave Maria Press can support you in all of that in our resources and our publications. And so, as always, we want to offer you a discount on the Grief of Dads, 25% off using code webinar0919 for today's date when ordering at Ave Maria Press. Again, thank you. I invite you to sign up for invites to future webinars. Our next webinar will be October 10th, and we're going to talk about small groups. Father Michael White and Tom Corcoran, the best-selling authors of the Rebuilt series, will be sharing how small groups really significantly changed the culture of their parish. And it's in those small groups that one another, that each, that the parishioners can support each other through trials in life, such as what we've been talking about today. So I will send you all an invite for that webinar. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Kelly, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.